The multi-storey car park at the John Hunter Hospital now has 850 parking spaces. Plus, there's room for another 150 vehicles along the perimeter road. But though the hospital is not yet fully operational, parking has already become a problem for its 800 staff, including the nurses.
The nurses are concerned that we do have a parking problem, and we've put some proposals forward today to take to the executive committee of the hospital to address these issues.
Next week, a $40,000 boom gate is to be installed. From April, visitors will have to pay $2 to park in the grounds. Staff will have the option of buying a $20 key card that will enable them to park for around $4 a week.
Well, I don't think anybody likes charges. It's an economic reality that some charges have to be levied. I think anyone who owns a car can afford the $2 a day for car parking, and I think they would find that as a very sensible proposal.
But it won't solve the problem. Today, tenders were called to expand parking facilities, extending west from the multi-storey car park and adding extra spaces at the adjacent Rankin Park Hospital. This could provide an extra 200 spaces at a cost of $1.2 million. But that money will have to come out of hospital running costs.
I think with the strategies of the bus transport, the bicycle, the taxis, I think putting that all together, that we should eliminate most of the problems.
If you're pulled over by police in Newcastle, the worst you can expect, apart from the ticket, is a follow-up phone call asking what you thought of your treatment. For the past month, police have been randomly surveying members of the public to gauge customer satisfaction.
Look, I believe your most recent contact was a break-enter in Steel. Was this contact made by a telephone? It was. What, you rang the police station, did you? Right, and police came and saw you?
Law enforcement aside, the police force in many ways resembles any other large organisation dealing with the public. And just like those organisations, customer satisfaction is becoming increasingly relevant. When the survey ends in a few weeks, police will have collected several hundred customer responses from people reporting violent crime to traffic offences. Police Inspector Bryson Potter says the survey isn't just a PR exercise.
Oh no, it'll go much further than a PR exercise. The results will go to Sydney, they'll be analysed and assessed, and it will improve our service to the public, I'm sure.
Who knows where it will all end, but one thing is certain, the day when dissatisfied customers can expect a full refund on their fines is still a long way down the track. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
A sight all Knights fans wanted to see, the return of Big Mark Sargent to the paddock, and after making a couple of runs and some solid hits, he was generally pretty happy to get through a full game in reserve grade.
A little bit of confidence building?
Yeah, I was happy enough for the way I went and did a few good things out there. As I probably wasn't as involved as I'd like to be, but it's early days. So.
In first grade, the Knights rested many of their key players while West were nearly at full strength. And after David Boyd was dispatched to the sin bin for 5, second rower Cameron Blair was on the end of Magpie pressure and he was able to touch down under the posts. A short time later, Blair was on the receiving end of some heavy Knights defence. And then Alan Fowler almost posted another black and white try as he charged down a kick, but Rodwell was able to win the race to clean up for the Knights. A pleasing sign for the home team is the continued good form of former All Black John Schuster, and again he was responsible for many breaks, on this occasion just running out of pace and back up. Drama then for West as flamboyant Paul Langmack went down in a scream of agony, and the stretcher was rushed out with West officials fearing the worst. But on further examination, Langmack had suffered little more than a slightly torn muscle in the knee region. A full report on the match on SportsCentre Sunday tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. Tracy Morton looked down and out after a drubbing in the first set, won easily by her opponent Louise Fleming 6-1. But Morton was able to dramatically turn the match around and level at a set all. The second set scoreline also 6-1. The deciding set was full of high tension, and finally it was Morton who just got on top to tip Fleming out of the tournament and advance to the final. Pat Rafter was always in control of his single semi-final against Heath Denman. Rafter raced through the first set 6-2, and from there it was a formality as he wrapped up the match and a date in the final 6-2, 6-2.
The conference is aimed at shedding new light on an industry that is constantly being injected with new technology, and radiologists have come from as far away as Japan and the Middle East to hear about and see these latest developments. Aimed at making radiology faster, safer and more accurate, most of the new offerings are on show throughout the week-long conference being held at the City Hall, and the topic attracting the most attention is digital imaging archiving.
You'll be able to store X-ray films on optical disc, and you'll be able to retrieve them straight away instead of having to look for them in film rooms. That using this type of approach reduces the length of stay in hospital there and also can reduce the number of repeat examinations.
The reason for intense local interest is that in September that system will be introduced to the John Hunter Hospital, the first time it will be seen in Australia. Similar to this smaller system, also built by Toshiba, it will cost around $2 million and be phased in 3 stages, the final stage giving other hospitals access to its images when they eventually get the equipment. Bernard Crowe of the Australian Institute of Health says the system is already operating successfully overseas, but admits it will take lots of adjustments for radiologists here to make the switch.
They're used to doing their interpretations from film at the moment, and the possibility of interpreting from TV-type screens is going to take a lot of exploring.
Superman had nothing on these men of steel. He had only strength as a claim to fame, while these competitors will rely on their skills to qualify for a shot at an Australian title.
The first 2 days are qualifying heats. We bring these competitors here from 27 different regions. It is our task over the first 2 days to give all of those an 8-hour project each, and at the end of that time we assess the top 50% of those.
4 categories are being held in Newcastle, and they showcase the country's best in the fields of welding, metal fabrication, sheet metal work and fluid power. The Hunter will be represented by 5 competitors, including Elibana's Daniel Fletcher, the only local required to perform today. The finals won't be completed until Saturday, but Australian industry is already being hailed as the big winner.
That's one of the aims of the work skill competition, is to improve the standard of training for young people. And we find every year that they are a bit more mature and they are a bit better trained.
Lake Macquarie Council says it's been concerned about the state of the BNS scrap metal yard at Taralba for 10 years, but very little has ever been done to clean it up.
The nature of the operation down there seems to be that they haven't quite completed the first development when they've started on another one. Council is and has been concerned about it and has conducted many inspections of the site. We have had undertakings from the owners and the occupiers to take action, but to no satisfactory conclusion.
Council, though, can no longer ignore the problem. On Saturday night, hundreds of tyres stockpiled on the site caught fire. It took fire officers 13.5 hours to put out the blaze, and late today the rubble was still smouldering. But while the unsightly appearance of the yard is a concern to Council, it is an alarming allegation that has triggered a new investigation.
Well, I'm concerned that we could have some environmental problems down there in this particular yard. In the fact that it could be discharging into Cockle Creek. There are some reports of chemical drums that haven't been cleaned out. There is the shredded tyres that have been buried and the runoff from that. There are some environmental concerns down there.
While the owners of the yard admit they've often acted outside development consent guidelines, they flatly deny any chemicals are being stored in the yard.
No, there's none. We don't have any illegal chemicals, and I'm quite happy to show anybody around the property and if they can find some. We've got drums that had markings of things from panel beating shops may have had things in it, but we use them to store water in, so if we do have a fire problem, we put that material.
A mayoral minute will be put to Council tonight calling for a full and immediate inspection of the site, and if nothing is done to clean up the yard, Council says it has no choice but to take legal action. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
There were hundreds of angry residents, each with their own story of the industrial fallout that's become part and parcel of living in Mayfield.
Some days it's white, you can smell the acid in the smoke. Sometimes it's filthy brown and black.
At night, a lot of people here have to shut windows when they go to sleep. That's right. Because the pollution just pours right through the house.
The large turnout proved just how many residents are fed up, and a 14-person committee was formed to organise their plan of action. BHP representative Brian Butler braved the crowd, doing his best to reassure locals accidents of the past won't happen again.
And generally the operation's unchanged.
That was the worst for 50 years for 50 years in that area, Mr. Butler. That was the worst.
But conspicuous by its absence was the State Pollution Control Commission, the government department directly responsible for monitoring the effects of industry on the environment. Locals were outraged that their invitation was declined, and they passed a vote of no confidence in the SPCC.
The SPCC should have been there to answer the people and to speak to the people about the pollution in Mayfield West and in Mayfield. I don't believe they give a damn. I don't believe that they care less about the pollution.
But it seems the vote of no confidence in the SPCC has been like water off a duck's back. Today, Commission officers maintain their wall of silence, refusing to comment on the results of last night's meeting or on the complaints of the residents. Alison Peters for NBN News.
International Sports Centre rise and applaud the Newcastle Knights.
Opposing teams are shell-shocked by it. The home team thrives on it. The parochial sport at the International Sports Centre when the Knights are engaged in battle for the Winfield Cup. Each year, the private boxes and the reserve seating in the grandstand has been sold out months in advance, so the management have taken steps to provide extra seating on the eastern side of the ground.
We've put in about 1,200 seats here, and people have been flocking in to buy these, Michael. There are a few left at either end. They're still very good seats. They're close to the sideline. They're $120 per year, and they get an option on them. Get a seat, keep paying it, you got it for life.
Along with this new seating arrangement, there has been one other change that will affect part of the average crowd of 22,025, and that is the use of folding chairs on the hill.
Formerly, deck chairs were put on the front edge of this path behind us here that goes 3 parts of the way around the ground. That will not be allowed anymore. It's too congested. Safety reasons, the police are involved in that, of course. You must be able to keep your accesses clear. And there'll be no deck chairs on the front of the hills. Any deck chairs, folding chairs of any sort, will be asked to be put towards the back of the hills.
For the financially strapped Knights, every dollar counts, and for his part, Lee Morn is happy with the marketing of the Newcastle club.
We do better marketing-wise than I think anyone in it. and it's all because of the support of the people of the Hunter Valley, commercially and individually, and of course the efforts of the boys out there. That's what it's all about.
A group of youngsters, aided by a couple of old hands, guided the struggling club to its first district premiership since 1952, defeating Lakes United. And last night, more good news for the Cheetahs, as local building firm McDonald Jones joined the club with a sponsorship for the next 6 years. The directors of the firm, Bill McDonald, Phil Jones and Cliff Princehorn, stated that a one-year arrangement wasn't in the best interest of either party, and they were happy to become a solid part of the McDonald Jones Cheetahs. Captain Coach Craig Higgins echoed those sentiments.
Like the rest of the world, Newcastle students relied heavily on the media to interpret the quickly changing events in the Gulf. But today was a chance to see behind the headlines and the manoeuvres that led first to the invasion of Kuwait.
But I'm afraid most of us in Baghdad thought that this was just rumbling and threatening behaviour rather than any planned manoeuvre to occupy a neighbouring country. And I think you'll find the record of history is that most commentators and most diplomats involved did not really expect anything on the scale that suddenly occurred.
After the occupation, events moved quickly for the world and particularly for Mr. Lloyd.
Several Australians had, under the idea that they were travelling on British passports, been taken to strategic sites long before our full commitment became clear.
He says while the Iraqis were taken back at the strength of reaction from the rest of the world, no direct retaliation was taken against Australians once our warships were committed to the Gulf. He complimented the professionalism of Australian journalists who covered the conflict, but said censorship and propaganda were a natural part of war. As to the future of Iraq, he says it's a case of watching and waiting. He says life for many Iraqis is better under Saddam Hussein than his predecessors, and he warns of even darker forces who may vie for power. After many years of challenging diplomatic positions around the world, he is willing to return to Iraq, when hopefully stability returns.
Under the proposal endorsed at the United Mineworkers Federation National Conference in Wollongong, coal mines throughout Australia will be declared alcohol and drug-free sites. Federation check inspectors suggested the scheme to the conference after revealing a significant increase in the incidence of alcohol and drugs in mine accidents and rates of absenteeism. Random tests would be done by check inspectors or government officers under a similar manner to police breath testing on the roads. The Federation will propose that any miner found to have alcohol or drugs in his system be taken before the mine manager. The offender would be advised to refrain from alcohol or drugs before and during work and offered a counselling course. Repeated offences after counselling could lead to dismissal. The conference was told that there had been a number of alcohol-related accidents in the Hunter Valley's open cut mines in which workers were crashing machinery. Mine managers and mining union officials will be expected also to empty their office fridges of alcohol.
While a majority of Australian car makers presently have their production lines in low gear, Mitsubishi has begun churning out the car it hopes will top 40,000 sales a year. In Japan, this European-looking car is sold as the Diamante Sigma. Here, it's the Magna. But building it in Australia and adapting it for local conditions has cost Mitsubishi some $300 million. There is, however, at least one spin-off. A total of 36 panels made in South Australia will be exported to Japan for use on the Sigma version. The engine is a fuel-injected 2.6 litre four-cylinder, similar to the Magna unit, But there is a new 4-speed automatic transmission which is capable of handling the extra power of a V6, a likely development later in the year. Prices of the new car range from $21,600 to $33,800 for the top-of-the-line Elite model.
Jester Royale brilliantly won the Brambles Classic at Kembla Grange yesterday, giving her automatic qualification for the $2 million Golden Slipper Stakes. Owner John Hawkins originally paid the first entry fee for Jester Royale, but the second payment of $500 was 4 hours late and was returned. Now John has the agonising decision of paying the late fee of $75,000, and today he wanted time to think things over. Yesterday's jockey Ken Russell feels she's improved 3 or 4 lengths on her game second to Torres in the Coca-Cola Classic. From now, trainer Max Lees and owner John Hawkins have a few anxious hours ahead of them.
The Minister went on the beat last night on a special Newcastle police enforcement. But Mr Pickering's tour of the inner city was in the relative quiet of the early evening, missing the hectic rounds after midnight. 23 additional police laid 39 charges and made 33 arrests for a variety of street offences. Touring police stations this morning, Mr Pickering praised the work of the force, saying the high charges tally proved police were on the job. On the controversial issue of disbanding police rescue, the Minister incredibly agreed with a public outcry against the move.
I can understand the community wanting to support police rescue. I'd feel like signing that petition myself because they've done a fantastic job.
Mr Pickering said the changeover of rescue services was a necessary move. He said police resources were already stretched and the fire brigade was underutilised. Peter Ryan, NBN News.